Well, we've been warning you for a couple of weeks now that you'd be hearing from some of the candidates for the position of Director of Spiritual Life and School Minister. And this morning, we want to welcome Mr. Scott LeBrun. Scott? As several of you have reason to know, he's been at the Fay School for a long time, and he's currently in charge of secondary school placement and the chairman of the wellness department. So his thinking runs along the lines that our thinking has been running for a while, and I hope you'll enjoy him, and I hope you'll give him a good welcome. Welcome, Scott.
Good morning, everybody. As Reverend Flanders said, my name is Scott LeBrun, and I'm so humbled to be here with you this morning. I've had the chance to get to know the Brooks community over the past 20 years or so, and I've always been touched by the warmth and authenticity of the people who live, work, and learn here. I'm excited to be able to spend some time with you on campus and to get to know some of you, and it's a privilege to speak before you in this beautiful Ashburn Chapel. I'd like to begin my short talk today by telling you one of my favorite stories, which has come to have great meaning to me over time, and I think you'll like it. Some 3,000 years ago, the Burmese army was planning an attack on their neighboring Siam, which is now Thailand. There were a group of devout Buddhist monks living close to the Burmese border in Siam, and in their possession was a massive solid gold statue of their beloved Buddha. The statue meant everything to these monks. It was the image that they knelt before multiple times for several hours each day. The statue was worth what today would be considered about $200 million. But to the monks, its value was much more than monetary. As rumors spread about the impending invasion, they realized that the statue would be highly coveted by the Burmese army, not because of the religious significance, but because of its wealth. So the monks masterminded an ingenious plan. They covered the statue in layer upon layer of earth-colored plaster, hoping to hide its significance from the invading army. Several weeks later, the Burmese came just as suspected, and the monks sadly were slain, taking the secret of their golden Buddha to their graves. Over time, the monastery was reestablished, and in the 1950s, the religious community was asked to move by the Thai government to relocate so that they could build a new highway. The monks arranged for a crane to come to hoist their Buddha to the new location of their monastery. When the crane went to lift the statue, it buckled under the overwhelming and unexpected weight of the statue, and it dropped the statue down to the ground. Though mostly unharmed, a slight crack appeared in the statue. Not knowing what to do, the monks covered the statue with a tarp and agreed to meet the next day to figure out how we're going to move this, such an important piece, to our new home. That night, a huge rainstorm swept through the area, and one of the head monks was nervous about the statue. What's going to happen to it? Is it going to be damaged? So he went out to check on it through the pelting rain. He grabbed a flashlight, and when he shone his flashlight on the statue, he saw a golden glow emanating from the center of the crack in the plaster. The monk carefully began chiseling away at the plaster with the butt of his flashlight to unveil the beautiful, solid gold Buddha. Today, this statue sits at the Temple of the Golden Buddha in Bangkok, where millions of visitors go each year to witness its beauty. I suspect some of you have seen it firsthand. When Reverend Flanders spoke to me about this chapel service, he advised me to share with you something of great importance to me. There are so many things that I can say, but one message related to the Golden Buddha is at the core of how I try to live my life. I'm almost certain that every one of you has been to a graduation ceremony before. As the youngest in a family of 6 children, I've sat through far too many. In the past, I haven't loved graduations. For some reason, despite the pomp and pride around me, I always find myself feeling a little deflated at the conclusion of the ceremony. I realize that this is a little strange and certainly not the way graduations are supposed to make people feel. So I did a little soul searching to figure out why this might be the case. After some self-reflection, I figured it out. It's the valedictorian address that always gets me down. The chosen student speaker stands wide-eyed before her peers and so ambitiously challenged the graduates to change the future. It's our duty and responsibility to change the future of our world, she declares with zeal and optimism. Why would such an inspirational sentiment make me feel down, one might ask? Well, it's been almost 20 years since I was given that charge at my high school graduation, and 15 years since I heard that same message at my college commencement. In thinking about it, I've heard a similar sentiment each of the 12 graduations I've attended at Faith School as well. When I reflect upon this challenge, I realize that I've been nothing but a complete failure. I've lived up to none of the expectations of those graduation speakers. I haven't changed the world. I haven't shaped the future through my heroic actions. In fact, I sometimes wonder, is it even in my power to do so? In thinking about this a little bit more deeply, I've come to realize that I've perhaps been approaching things all wrong. Maybe, just maybe, changing the world is not quite as abstract and unattainable as I previously thought. What if we took a step back and asked ourselves, how can I change this day, this moment even, to make a better one for those around me? What if, over the course of our lifetime, we piled up an infinite number of moments filled with kindness, compassion, love, empathy, inclusion, gratitude, selflessness, and understanding? Will we not leave a lasting impression on those around us? I don't really think this question needs answering. So this brings me to my message to you today. Don't pass up the everyday opportunities you have to do good for others. It's a simple one in theory, but not always easy to live by. I sometimes feel like the world would rather cover us in proverbial plaster than to promote the golden core that is within each of us. We get caught up in the everyday stressors of our own lives, comparing ourselves to other people, consumerism, and spending time doing things that we know are not good for us. The good news for all of us is that those things that cover us up in ways that we're not proud of can be chipped away with little effort. At any given moment, we can remind ourselves of what's at our core, the goodness that lies within each of us, and choose to live more aware of the impact we have on others. If you'll allow me to use the analogy of the Buddha again, I think there's another tip for living that we can uncover. It is this: we should be flashlights to those around us, not plaster. What I mean is that we must be people that look for good in others, even those with whom it sometimes seems hard. So much of the turmoil in today's world seems to revolve around people not taking time to recognize the good in others. When we encounter people who look differently than we do or believe something that we don't believe, it's easy to make judgments about them without knowing them. When this happens, we put a barrier between us and them, like the barrier that hid the golden Buddha. On the other hand, when we work to see the good in others and try to put ourselves in their shoes, we act as flashlights, encouraging them to be true to their golden core. Mr. Packard spoke eloquently of the importance of this charge at the very first chapel of the year, the one that was outside overlooking the lake, which I won't try to pronounce because I'll mess it up. He said, if we're to do well this year as a school, we will do well at helping one another leverage the many gifts that we carried with us through this dewy grass to our seats this morning. We will do well at helping one another know and be our best selves and be confident in who that person is. Changing the world does not involve heroics. It means stopping to help a peer who dropped something off of his tray in the dining hall without laughing. It's about that helmet butt when your goalie lets in the tying goal during that ever so important playoff game. It's that genuine, Maybe that wasn't the right place for you anyways. All will work out. Comment offered when the letter your friend's been waiting for from that perfect college doesn't read the way she prayed it would. It's reaching out to tell a friend when enough is enough when you're concerned about something he's doing. These are the kinds of heroics that I've repeatedly seen when working with students over the years, and that undoubtedly are found within the Brooks community. Ultimately, this is what compels me to want to make this school the next home for me and my family. I'd like to pause for just a moment here and allow you to be with yourself in thought for a moment or two. I'd like to challenge you to think about the opportunities you have on a daily basis to make a difference. What are the gifts that you bring to this community, and how do you use them to make it an even stronger one? Are you more often a plaster layer or a flashlight in your relationships with others? Take a minute in quiet and just reflect on these questions, if you will. Thanks. I'd like to share with you a brief passage that one of my dearest friends with whom I worked at Faith School for 6 or 7 years sent to me in the mail several years ago. It's a quotation that I have pinned on my bulletin board by my desk. It's a part of the eulogy that President Obama delivered at Senator Ted Kennedy's funeral in August of 2009. I believe it is as much of a prayer as it is a well-crafted speech, and I try to read it every day. We cannot know for certain how long we have here. We cannot foresee the trials or misfortunes that will test us along the way. We cannot know God's plan for us. What we can do is live our lives as best we can, with purpose and love and joy. We can use each day to show those who are closest to us how much we care about them, and treat others with the kindness and respect we wish for ourselves. We can learn from our mistakes and grow from our failure, and we can strive at all costs to make the world a better place, so that someday, if we are blessed to look back on our time here, we can know we spent it well, that we made a difference, that our fleeting presence had a lasting impact on the lives of other human beings. I printed a copy of this passage for you, and should you wish, as you're leaving the chapel, you can take one. It's on the back there by the programs. I thank you all for having me, and it was great to be here. I'd like to conclude with a brief activity, and I'm going to need your help doing so. And perhaps you're going to think it's a little corny, but I think it sort of epitomizes 2 important points of spirituality for me. The first is that I very strongly believe that spirituality isn't something that needs to exist just in a chapel or a synagogue or a mosque. One of the places that I feel most close to my higher power is out in nature. So whether it's a beautiful sunrise or waves crashing or intense rainstorm, it makes me feel part of something bigger in this world. The second thing that I think this little activity does is it shows the power of community, which I think is fundamental to anyone's spiritual strength, is to be a part of a community. So I'm going to ask you to just trust me and do as I say, and hopefully it'll go well. So I'm going to come throughout the chapel in just a minute, and I'm going to be making a signal with my hands. And I'm just going to ask you, as I come to your pew, to follow my lead, and keep doing that until I come back around to your pew again. Okay, so no talking, and just do as I say, and we'll see how this goes. All right, trust me here. And at the end, we'll just end in silence until Reverend Flanders comes back to lead us again. Ready? You guys will help me?
That didn't sound like silence. Gee. Scott, don't worry about, you were afraid it might be a little corny. Don't worry about it. I didn't think it was corny, but people are used to corny here. Right? Or am I wrong?